Hello everyone, and welcome to this ShipWeight webinar. Thank you all for joining. My name is Runar Aasen, and I will do the presentation of ShipWeight in this webinar. And together with me I have Randi Fikkan as a panelist who will try to answer any questions you might have in the chat during this presentation. So if you have a question, feel free to type them into the chat and we will try to answer them right away. In this webinar we'll be looking into some of the new features in ShipWeight 13.5, and also we'd like to present the new ShipWeight Cloud solution for you at the end. So the features that we will be showing is how to add custom codes to the main window, the new logbook graph feature, some new parameter functionality, some new crystal reports functionality, and as mentioned at the end, presenting the new ShipWeight Cloud solution. So let's get started with the first topic for today, how to add custom code to the main window. So here's ShipWeight with a test project, and this is the main window. And in this test project I have defined 3 custom codes. One area, which is a list box code with A, B, C as code IDs, and then I have another custom code, just a cost in US dollars, and then a third one which I called complete percentage. So I'm going to assume that all of you are familiar with custom codes. I think most of you use them. And typically the custom codes are used for the details. So this is in the item window, and we have some sample items here. And as you can see, we can go here and we can assign values, custom code values to these items that we have here. I think you probably, most of you know this quite well. But up until recently, all of these custom codes have been attached to the items only, and it's not been able to sort of bridge them over to the main window. There is one small exception to that, and it has been possible also in previous version to go and right-click and select Show Fields. And that brings up this window here where you can check the boxes next to these quantities and weight and center of gravity fields to what to show and not to show. And it has been possible here to say, for example, that we want to include also a field for the cost, if this is a number field in the items, and if you add that, then it will bring those items into the summary of those items into the main window and show the custom code in the main window here, and just summarize that next to the weight and center of gravity for the weight groups, just more or less the same weight summarizes the weight. So this has actually been possible for at least the last 2 versions of ShipWeight, but it has stopped there. But now in 13.5 we have added some completely new functionality related to this, and one new thing is that we can now actually show and assign values for any type of custom code into the main window. For example, if I go back here and to Show Field and now say that I want to also show the area, which is my custom code for with the list box, where I can select from 3 different types of area. This has not been possible before. Then I get my area here, and for these weight groups where there are a summary of details of items where individual items can have different area, it doesn't make sense to attach any area. But if you see down here, we have some values for machinery which have been parametrically estimated, and these are weight group values and not items values. And previously it's not been possible to assign a custom code value to either an estimated value or a subjective weight group values like this, but this is now possible, and it's done by simply going to the area column in the main window now, and you will be able to select from the drop list and set the area just the same way as you would do with an item. So now we can also mark weight groups with or assign custom codes also to a complete weight group like this. So this is one thing that's new, and there's another thing that's new as well, and I want to show that with this last custom code sample, which is we can go and show that as well. Show fields and complete. And by the way, in this window here you can select which one you want to see and what you don't want to see, but you can also change the order of appearance of these columns. Let me go back and show that. So if I go back to show fields, I've now selected to to see all my custom codes and some weight. I've deselected some of the standard deviations and the extent of the weights. And if I for some reason now want to have this complete as the first of my custom code, then I can click on it and drag, and then I'll just drop it. So click, drag and drop to position it, and click OK, and then it will rearrange it to now have this complete custom code as the first one after my weight and center of gravity. And by the way, this show field and functionality is also existing down in this item window here. You can right click and select show fields, and then it will bring up similar window for you for this details view down here. Right, so what I wanted to show now is that for this complete one, what is new here, this is also a number field, but so far we have only been able to do number fields that have been with the behavior of summarizing in the main window. So if I go to this mooring equipment and open up the item window, and then I say that, well, this item is 100% complete, and this item here is 0% complete, and then I close this window, and by default then it's going to summarize and show us that okay, completeness for E25 is 100%, but this is of course incorrect. And previously this was the only way custom code could summarize, but now you have the possibility, a new possibility, to define how these should be summarized. So let's have a look at that. If I go back to my custom code, you will see that there is a new field to the far right, which is called AutoSum, and this is the new column where you can specify how to summarize numbers in custom codes. And so for the complete here, by default it's set to sum, but I can change this and I can put average, count, maximum, minimum, and weighted average. So if I put average instead here, for example, and close and summarize, I get the new summary now, and now we can see here that E254 is set to 50%, meaning that now 50% of the items are now marked as complete. This is 50% means 50% of the number of items. If I want this percentage to show not the completeness of per number of items, but completeness of the weight, then I can go back in here, and instead of average I will now select weighted average, and then I'm gonna say that I want to weigh this with the weight. And then if I close and summarize, it's going to show me that okay, 26% of the total weight of E254 has been marked as confirmed. So this was just a small sample of the possibilities here. I think this opens up a huge number of possibilities to what you can do in the main window that you couldn't do in previous versions. So we hope you will enjoy this flexibility. Now let's move on to the next topic. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is the new logbook graph feature. So first of all, what is the logbook? Let's go back to our ShipWeight project, and on the view menu you will see there's a submenu called logging, and it has two options: project logbook and weight group logbook. And either you pick one or the other. What happens is that you get up this logging window where you can add a comment, and my comment for March 30, 2022 project looks okay. You can type in anything, you can add it to the log, you will get a date, time, a user, and you get your comments, and you can also assign this to a certain weight group if you want to say that if there's a specific thing that you want to say about, for example, E1.1 hatches, you can say that the sign of hatches have changed, weight increase about 2 tons, for example, and then add that to the logs. So you can create these logs either just chronologically or assign it to the weight group, and this data can of course then be printed out either from the window here, or you can use them in the embedded reports or in Crystal reports to bring in comments like this. So this is the logbook, and it's been there for a while. I'm just going to mention one thing before I go to the new feature of this logbook, and that's in the option window there is a log tab sheet, and here you can check if you want to with this checkbox here, show log window at shutdown, that will tell ShipWeight to show this window when you change a project. When you close the project, it's gonna pop up this window automatically for you if this checkbox is on. If you don't want that, you can uncheck it, just to let you know that. Okay, so back to the new functionality of this logbook. In this new functionality, we can create graphs, and we can create graphs from times that you set yourself, or we can create them automatically from the log database. What do I mean by this? For example, if I select the Lightship weight group here, and then I right click it and I select log values. Now I've created a point with these values at this point in time. Now let's make a change to the weight here. Let's add some anchors with chains quickly, just as a subjective value here to get a new Lightship value. Then I'm going to right click here and say log values again. Now what is going to happen if I go back to the logbook, go to logging and weight group logbook, and it opens this up now when I selected the Lightship. It has opened it up on the Lightship weight group here, and you can see that it's automatically logged these weights and center of gravity for the light ship weight group. But the new graph feature is that if there's a splitter here that you can grab with the mouse and bring down, and then you can go here to say weight logbook, and now you can see a graph of the weight and VCG and LCG and TCG for the light ship weight of these two loggings that you did. So this is a weight development within the current project, so it's not between two different revisions, but it's between two marked times in the same revision. And as you can see, they are stored here. We have this one which have been manually tagged, but we will see if you go to this weight log database, you will see more points, and these points have been extracted from the project log database. So these are automatically extracted every time there's a change, and that change is saved. Now I haven't saved this change yet, so that's why the latest will not show up here, but if I save it, it will show. So here we can see the weight development from with the weight on the y-axis and date on the x-axis for the weight, and the VCG, LCG and TCG for this within this revision. And you will see it for the weight group that you selected. So if I go down to machinery, it will show for machinery. I can also, so any one of the weights that I select here, it will show the weight and CG development for that weight group. If I go back to light ship, I'm just going to show one final thing, is that you can also check this box to include sub-level, and then it will include the sub-level one level down also within the graph. So here it now has the light ship weight, but then it also includes now trend lines for equipment, hull, machinery below. And this is the same for the VCG and the LCG and TCG. And what's nice about this log feature here is that even if you've never used it before, as long as logging has been turned on for your project, you can open up this window, go in and check development for weight groups along the time axis like here. And last thing to mention is that I said something about the log option as long as it's turned on. So how do I know? Well, if you go to the view menu and then go to go to the view menu, open up the options window, go to the log tab sheet. Go to the database tab sheet, and here you have this log DB that should be turned on. Check if all changes should be written to the log database. As long as this is on, and it should be on by default, and this is also to whether to include it or on import or not. So as long as this is turned on, then you should be able for the project to get this automatic logbook graph function for your project. And as mentioned, this goes well also for older project, because as long as logging has been turned on, we're just utilizing data that's already there. So that was the new logbook function. Let's move on. The next topic then is the new parameter functionality, and as you will see, we have added quite some enhancement to the way you can handle parameters in ShipWeight. If we go back to our project and go to the database menu and administrator and to parameter definition, This is going to bring up the parameter definition window, which is where you can see all parameters existing in your system database in ShipWeight and how they are defined. They are defined with an ID, a name, description, a type, and so forth. And in this new version there are 3 new columns: one alias, one image, and one default value. And we're gonna have a look at these. If we start with the alias, we can scroll down first and find, I want to use for this example the length between perpendicular. So I find that, let's see, it's here. So the length between perpendicular is one of the main parameters, and it has a parameter ID which is LPE, and it has a description. What's new in this version is that you can now use these parameters in formulas in ShipWeight. This means that you can use the value of these to calculate, for example, a weight or a center of gravity, either for an item and a weight group. And then the easiest way to refer to this parameter is by defining an alias for it. So if you go and select this parameter and then go into this alias column for that row, you can call it length or just lang or L. You can give it, you freely define an alias for this parameter. And when defined like this, then you can use the alias to refer to this parameter for when using it in formulas in ShipWeight. I will of course show this. But before I go and show this, I'm gonna create 4 new parameters to show something more new things while I'm here in this window. So I'll just I'm gonna give an parameter ID as webinar 1, and this will be I'm going to call it my file for the name description. And what I want to show you with this one is a new type parameter that we have defined, and that parameter type is link. And that's all I need to do to define this one. Then I'll right click and insert another row here, and then I'm going to put the webinar 2. These parameter IDs you can call what you want as long as they are unique. And for this one I'm just going to call it my image and define this as a parameter type of memo. And let's insert another one. Just call it webinar 3. And this is going to be I'm going to create a parameter for the light ship weight. So in the name I'm going to call it light ship weight, and the light ship weight I have to define. I'm going to define this as a composite type because I'm going to create an expression for this. And the expression here is going to be the weight group, which in this case is LW, but of course you can refer to any weight group depending on the parameter you want to define. And then you type in the line, like this line character, like this, and then you indicate what mass property or weight values you want to grab from the light ship weight group. And in this case we want to grab the weight, so I'm going to put in W. One final example. Insert a new line, create yet another parameter, webinar 4, and light ship VCG. So I'm gonna create a parameter for the light ship VCG. Again, this will be a composite, and similar in the expression column here as I did with the weight. I'm going to do LW, which points to the weight group this parameter will get its values from, then the line, and then a V for the VCG. As you can imagine, we have L for the LCG and T for the TCG. We have A for aft, F for fore, and so on. Okay, so I've created 4 new and defined 1 alias. Let's see how we can use this. Click OK, and it's asking me to reload the parameter definition. I will say yes to that. Now, then the first thing we can have a look at then is to just define a formula for on a weight group level. And the formula that we want to define here is going to be, let's say that we want to put in, we don't have anything for the keel here. Let's put in a weight group value for the keel. So we'll say that the keel is going to be 25 tons, and with a VCG of let's say 0.2 meters. And then for the LCG, I want to put in use a formula, and now I can say that I want this to be half of the perpendicular. Then I can do equal and use L for my alias for the length between perpendiculars, and multiply by 0.5. And then you see it calculated this to 34.5. And if we go over here and look at the length between perpendiculars, 69 meters, so that has been calculated correctly. I'm just going to put in 0 for TCG here. So this is how we use now the formula. If I rest my mouse, it will show in the tooltip the formula that's used for this. And if I now go into the parameter window and change this parameter, let's change this from 69 to 70 meters. Then when I click OK here, this should update. Click OK, and this updated from 34.5 to 35 meters. I should mention that on the options window, on the view menu, there is a checkbox whether or not you want to automatically calculate these formula values. So if this is checked, then it will automatically recalculate these whenever you change a parameter. I can also open up the item window, and just to show you that these can also be used for items now. So if I put in a new test unit here and just give it a weight and CG, and then for LCG here again I can, for example, put in 0.25 multiplied by L, and then it's calculated for the item as well. Now actually I can mention it, if you do, you can use parameters even without alias. So if you remember the parameter ID, you can type LPE, which is the parameter ID for length between perpendicular, and use that also to calculate. That's entirely possible, although most of you will probably not remember this, and that's of course why we added this parameter IDs. Okay, the aliases. Now closing this window, and let's go back here and see how we can utilize these parameters that we used for the weight. And I should go back database administrator and actually go down to these webinars and create some aliases. I forgot that also for these webinars, this light ShipWeight and light ship LCD. Let me just call this LWW, and this one LWV. Okay, so then I have aliases, and then now I can also use this one. So if I have a temporary weight, or it could be like a margin group or whatever, and I want that always to be, let's say, 10% of the light ship weight, then I can say equals 0.1 multiplied by LWW, and then it will calculate 10% of my light ship weight for me here. And then similar for the VCG, I can say that I want this one to be the VCG of the light ship weight plus 20 centimeters, for example. And then I can put in here just for now a value for weight and LCG. Again, here you can also actually type in directly. So if I didn't create the parameter for LCG, but I can then say equal and use this formula LW, and then this directly, and then a line, and then in this case an L for LCG, and then it gives me the value of the LCG for the light ship weight directly without going through an alias of a parameter. So that's also possible here. The advantage of creating alias or a dedicated parameter for this is that you can then go and use that in a method, parametric estimation method, but we will get back to that another time. Alright, so I created two more parameters, and let's go and have a look at those. Those were the new types. If I go parameters here and scroll down to find I called it my my file and my image. My file, if you define that as we did like a link, that parameter will have a folder icon, and that allows you to click on that, and then you can browse and you can select any file, a PDF, Word file, or picture, whatever, and then just point to that file via this parameter. Similar thing for image. If I go to my image and click here, see, I have named this wrongly. It should be my, doesn't matter. But this new memo parameter allows you to store rich text. So if I have a Word file here, for example, and I use some colors and things like this to create some rich format text in Word, for example, I can copy this, and then I can paste it into this type of parameter, and then I can store this rich text in a parameter. So why is this important, and what can it be used for? This has to do with reports, and I will show how this is used fully when we get to the crystal reports in a minute. One more thing to show about these new parameters, and that is if we go to database administrator and parameter definition again, then you will see this new column image, and I wanted to make an example there. So this means that we can now attach an explanation image to a parameter. If I scroll down, let's sort on the name here and go and find, for example, volume of superstructure. Let's see, volume of the superstructure here, find its parameter. If I want to explain to someone by the help of a picture what this parameter really means, I can go to this image column, double click, and this gives me this window here where I can open up and I can find a picture. And let's see, I have a sample picture here. I'm going to use this one. So this is just an example picture showing how to define the superstructure, in this case on an aircraft carrier. So if I now assign that image to this parameter, and whenever someone is using that parameter in a method or finding it just here in the parameter window or somewhere else, these windows now have this show image button here. So going here, let's see if we can find, scroll down and find volume superstructure. So finding that here, clicking it, then it's showing the picture, the connected picture to this parameter in this window. And similar, if I open up this one to define it here, also this window, just another example, now have this show image, so that will show the image that's connected to the parameter to give an explanation of what do we mean by this, by the superstructure. Okay, that's some of the changes that we've made to parameters. There are a couple of more, but I see we will not have time for that. We have to get back to that in another webinar and go on to the next topic. Next topic up is a new Crystal Report functionality, or maybe it's more correct to say new Crystal Report viewer, ShipWeight viewer functionality. And I'm going to use a different project for that, so I'm just gonna bring up another project. This is offshore sample project, and I'm gonna go back to those new parameters that we just saw, and I'm gonna show you how those can be utilized in a report now. So here we've defined our own report parameter view, and excuse me, and here you'll see that we have some typical just normal text parameters like book number, report description, document number, and so forth. But we've also utilized these new type of parameters, the ones that can be used to link towards a file. And here we have linked towards image file for a front page logo. We have linked to a report header logo, and we have linked to some other images that will go into the report. And finally, we have created these memo type of parameters where we have stored formatted text that is going to be used in the report. And note that even if it's not just storing the text here, of course. This one you can go in here and change any time. You can go in here and change this and edit these ones anytime you want. So we have several text documents with rich text also assigned as parameters, and the reason is that we're gonna use this in the Crystal reports, as you will see quite soon. I'm just going to cancel that. If we go and open up the Crystal reports viewer, then you will see that this has a new look. It looks like this. It has an input sheet and a view sheet. The previous one basically had the view sheet, and you were opening up the file, the template file, and then when you run the template file, you would have to give in the parameters. In this new viewer, you can give in the parameters in this view here, and you don't have to select a specific file, but you select the report through this list of your Crystal reports. If you get the new Crystal reports, the way you add it to the list is you add it by clicking on this plus sign. That brings up a window which will ask you to select the report, browse and select the report. So instead of browsing and selecting the Crystal report template every time, you do this just once and select the template file here. And then you can give it a name. By default it suggests file name, but we can call it just my report. So this will be the report name then. It gets in the list here. So now my report has become a selection in the list, and I don't have to select the file anymore. I can just find it in this drop list when it's been added. If you want to remove one from the list, you select it in the list and click the minus. So what happens now is that from this my report, we will see that there are the parameters, input parameters, are going are listed below here, and in addition to that, you can put in a revision table just for the purpose of this report itself. Just gonna put in and this is now saved with this report, so you can, every time you run it, you can add another line here, and you can also utilize this information in the report itself. The other thing that is worth noticed is that the input fields here, you can change the default values for those. So we have some input fields here now, but if you go to properties, it brings up this window, and we can say, for example, that this include appendix file. If you want that to be checked by default, you in this properties window, you check it, put it checked under the default value of chapters. Same here, if the custom code for summary, which now is default CO1, if you want that to be changed to CO5, you can change this to CO5 here. And time, if didn't have any specific default value, you can put in then 25 for time as the default value there. So if you now come back from another report back into this my report, then it's going to load what was set as your default value. It's going to load that include appendix is set by default, custom code for summary CO5, and time 25, and it remembers this revision. So this setup should be much more convenient for you and user friendly. Now finally, for the reports here, I wanted to show an example of a different report where we used this this one here, run the report, and when you click run the report, it starts to go into this viewer, and this is similar to actually how this crystal report viewer would look in previous versions of ShipWeight. So you find your report here, and what's excuse me, and I wanna, if I put this to the side here a little bit and bring back the parameters from this window, report, you will see that, you know, this picture here is showing because we selected that here from these parameters, and this input here comes from these parameters. And if I go to the next page here, this introduction text here, that's from the introduction text here, and the picture you see here is taken from the picture that we added here. So this is a report which is made up by combining pictures and rich text and normal parameters to form the body of the report as far as text and information. And then at the end we have the more traditionally summary and tables and graphs forming the rest of the report. So this is an example of a medium-sized report, 23 pages, where everything is produced in ShipWeight, including the front page and header and all text and all picture, everything produced here. This one you can send to the printer or to a file, and your report is done without having to go through any cut, copy and paste either in Word or Excel or whatever. And then when you save a new file, a revision, you can go in and just update the text here and run the report again, and then the text will be updated, and of course these tables will be updated by the new numbers and values in that revision. So this opens up the possibility to create complete reports within ShipWeight without having to step outside. And then of course it's very easy to redo this report. You just go back to the revision and run it, because you have everything that created the report there. Okay. Final topic of today is presenting the new ShipWeight Cloud solution. And this is a new subscription service where we give you access to some public light ship weight data for a lot of vessels in the cloud, via the cloud. And the way it works is that you contact us, subscribe to it, and then we give you access through the cloud, the way I'm going to show you here. So let's just move away this. Let's get this out of the way and go back to our, or actually I'm going to use a different project for this. I have a project here. I'm going to show an estimation from scratch using this new ShipWeight Cloud. And what I have is just started a new project with a tanker for oil, the type of ship, and for parameters the only thing I've entered in is length, beam depth 320 meters between perpendiculars, 60 meter beam and 30 meter depth to uppermost continuous deck. And the dead weight is 300,000 tons. So this is a huge super tanker. Now, I've never estimated a super tanker before. I don't have any historical data, so I'm going to use the ShipWeight Cloud to get the first impression of where the weight might be. I then have to go to view options and make sure that under the estimation tab sheet I've checked for this project to include the cloud database. Now this will give me access to a lot of let's see, they're here, projects, and it takes a few seconds to connect to the cloud and load all projects, but it should be here any second. Here, so this is more than 10,000 vessels in the list here of different types of vessels, and they are all identified by their IMO number here. And from these 10,000, I'm now going to estimate the lightship weight. So I'm selecting lightship weight and open up the parametric estimation window. And again, it's going to take a few seconds more than normal to do this, since it's going online and loading a lot of data into the parametric window. But it shouldn't take too long. Here we are. And now we can see that it's loaded in 1,773 ships out of 10,714, and this is done by the usual selection that's standard default in ShipWeight, which is to select by the vessel type. And I've cheated a little bit. I've already been in here and excluded everything except for tanker for oil. So all of these 1,700 vessels are tanker for oil, no other tankers. Then next step is to get the vessels that's within the same size. So I'm going to go for the length and have a maximum of 350 meters and a minimum of, let's say, 280 meters, and set that, and then click here and wait for it to update. And here we are. Now we have 435 vessels, still quite a lot, which is within the similar length. I want to also put on a building year filter. I don't want to have anyone build late before 2010, so I'll set that filter, and then I have to check the box. And now I'm down to 119 vessels, and now I can use this for the normal weight to calculate the weight, taking typically I would in this case just use the regression or the average. We see the regression is 44,000. The average is also 44,000 something. If I look at the subjective one and drag this one up to the, if I disregard these 3 points here for now, I would just assume that they have lesser LBD and they are somewhat not in the cluster of this one. So but I see at the top here we're about 47,800 tons. If I go down to the lower part of this cluster, it's about 40,000. So my first guess here is just using the regression 44,400 and saying that, you know, with the lower lower of 40 and upper of 48,000, and there I have my first estimate of the light ship weight based upon the ShipWeight Cloud database. Now I can actually go back in and make a small check. If I go back into my estimate, I used now this method length beam depth, but I also have an alternative method that I've created, a test method, where I use the dead weight instead of length beam depth to see how that will work out. And I see the standard deviation is about 5% here on these vessels from on the regression line. If I change to a method using dead weight, so my method here, instead of weight being a coefficient times length beam depth, I have a method being a coefficient times dead weight. This is scaling the light ship weight used on the dead weight. And I see if I use the regression here, it's a little bit lower, it's 42,000. But and if I go to the subjective to have a look at the sort of the lower part, the points that are typically outlier are typically disregarded. But if we go in this area here, we're about 39,000 tons. If I go to this top here, we're about 46,000 ton. So yeah, I think this shows that our initial estimate, going back to our main parameter method, shows that our estimate of the regression here on 44,000 tons was probably not the bad one. So we will just stay with that. So that was spending 5 minutes using 4 parameters on a vessel type I knew nothing about, and I'm pretty sure that 45,000 tons shouldn't be completely off the chart, because history tells me it's not. So that's how you can use this ShipWeight Cloud. If you're interested in more about information about this service, you can contact us for a demo. You can also go to our webpage, shipweight.com. If you click on news, you will find a new here, launching a new subscription service, and then you can read some more about it. Perhaps most importantly, see the number of vessels that exist within each type of vessel, because that differs a little bit depending on the type of vessel. Some vessel types we have a lot of vessels, other we have fewer. So go into this to our web page, check it out, and if you're interested, contact us, and then we can give you a demo, for dedicated demo on this or on any of the other items we've shown today. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. Time is up. I want to thank you all for your attention. I hope you've been able to answer your questions during the webinar as you typed into the chat. If you have any questions that you think of after this webinar, of course feel free to email me, runar.åsen@basoftware.com. For further information, for any more questions or a quote, just contact us. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye bye.